And I guess we're recording now. And after our interview, we'll learn about AI and its use in videos, spooky and realistic. Last week was just a test of the text. Type in, what is the great walking away of the church? And in less than 5 seconds, I had a full-blown answer, and it fit like a glove. And the verses that were chosen and the assessment between them, if you didn't see last week's show, go back and see last week's show. It's spooky. And we're going to need this kind of technology as we get closer and closer to the end times as we get faster, right? Birth pains. All right, so I have my special guest on here. I got Dr. Gene Douglas. Gene, if you could go ahead and pop your camera and your mute, get that up and running. He's a candidate for U.S. House, North Carolina, number 2. He'll be running this year. And Gene, it's good to have you here. Really appreciate you coming on.
Well, thank you. The funny backdrop in the back is from the Hanalei area of Kauai, where we lived for a year.
Nice.
So, because I ran in Hawaii before in 1998 and 2000, and my wife won the primary in 1998.
Okay.
And I came in 3rd out of 9 for U.S. Senate, but we both had a great time. We didn't win, but we didn't care. So
nice. Well, so you're running in North Carolina. Tell us who you're running against, and what got you to step up and say, look, I'm going for it.
Well, basically some history. I decided to get into politics going back to 1985 when that's a longer story than we have time for. But the thing is, I embarrassed Senator Daniel Inouye before an audience of chemists where I was working because I caught him in BS. And basically the key thing was that he tried to get me fired. Well, in the 13 years between that and when we moved to Hawaii, because I started teaching chemistry in Florida, then we moved out to Micronesia, and then we were in Hawaii. I basically found out he was running for re-election, and the Hawaii sugar industry had been destroyed in the 13 years since I met him and such, because basically I knew that was going to happen based on his support for grain alcohol, which essentially decreases the cost of high fructose corn syrup, which replaced sugar, of which a major crop from Hawaii was Hawaii sugar.
Mm-hmm.
Coke, Pepsi, and everything. So basically, in the 12 years that went by between 1985, when I was a chemist, and then a chemistry teacher, living in Hawaii while my wife was going to get her degree in art, basically the Hawaii sugar industry was destroyed, and it was his fault, partially his fault. And so I decided to run for his Senate seat and try to get him fired, so to speak. And I had a great time, but it was like tilting at windmills, but I had a great time going around Hawaii, meeting people and everything else. And we put my wife in to run for U.S. House District 2 in Hawaii, and against 5 other candidates, and she won because it was Linda Lingle's year. And so basically Carol won the primary and ran against pro-abortion Patsy Mink, and I was pro-life also against pro-abortion Daniel Inouye, as well as a Kaka, who was a pastor's son in 2000. So basically, that's what got us involved in politics, because essentially Senator Inouye tried to get me fired, and then I tried to get him fired, and then I tried to get Senator Kaka fired, but I don't have anything. And then we moved to New Hampshire, number 2, and there was a Rhino Republican, basically Representative Charlie Bass, who was voting with the Democrats during the Bush administration, was pro-abortion as well. And he was running for re-election, and I decided, well, I should run to replace him. And it was me versus him in the primary. Me running against the incumbent. I got 13% of the vote. And thankfully, I did it in a friendly sort of way. Like, his name is Charlie Bass, and I said something smells fishy, and made the point of chicken of the sea. There was chicken of the sea, such like that. And I debated a can of tuna fish and such. So I had So I had fun with that too. And basically, I endorsed him after he won the primary, and he went on to get reelected because the wacko Democrats could accuse him of being the wacko flaky conservative because he was the moderate. So Katrina Sweat didn't win. He won re-election, which was fine because they still needed Republicans in the House. But then he lost a couple years later, or 4 years later, to a Democrat, a real Democrat, instead of him being a phony one. So that's what, and then I retired from teaching chemistry in 2021. I sold my house south of Fayetteville, moved up here to Wake County thinking there'd be a nice Republican, and found out Deborah Ross was a modern version of Patsy Mink. She worked as a lawyer for the ACLU and Planned Parenthood. And basically because of the fact that Planned Parenthood is providing transitioning drugs, etc., to people who want to castrate themselves or cut off body parts. It's a situation where basically I realized that I had to do it again because she even supports the Biden administration changing Title IX to let men and women sports if they wear a dress, which will essentially destroy high school and college sports across the country because the Department of Education is mandating it by changing Title IX. And so basically, just imagine a guy puts on a dress, claims he's a woman, and joins the college softball team because he's a lousy baseball player. So
Yeah, the whole Riley Gaines situation, right?
yeah, well, it's not just swimming; it's everything.
It's everything.
It's field hockey.
Weightlifting.
It's field hockey, weightlifting, lacrosse, all sorts of things that they're great women's sports for. I've taught many female students who are athletes who are there getting scholarships at the colleges I was teaching at because they were athletes and they liked chemistry or they didn't, either one. But the point is they were good at sports and they were entitled to do that. And the fact that of a guy being allowed in there to kind of compete and then blow everybody away or injure girls is just insane, patently insane. And it's perverted because Romans chapter 1 makes very, very clear that anyone who's essentially wants to do that, it's depraved. And so, but Deborah Ross approves of that. But she said, like, for example, I had a debate with Deborah Ross with a Unite the Vote group, a bunch of liberal activists that claim they're nonpartisan. And basically they asked me a question like, said, here in Raleigh, we're very concerned about the number of women who give birth, and then within the first year, babies can die and they get sicker and such like that. Well, what would you do if you went to Washington? And I said, well, that's a local responsibility. The fact that pastors, families, pro-life family centers can assist all girls in that situation. And the Biden administration is trying to close the pro-life family centers down. And then I said, I find it very odd that you're so concerned about the few women that give birth and up to their first year, but you're totally unconcerned about the 12 million babies that are murdered before birth in your areas. And it's like, it's like to go, oh, And so I addressed her on other
You're
things.
taking away our freedoms.
And she called me mean. Climbed into victim mode. And so, which is a typical liberal nonsense, which if you confront them with the truth, they things. But the videos on my website as well as on YouTube. So anyone interested can see it, but I can email you folks a copy. So the more the merrier that sees it, because I basically even got her to support E-Verify, which essentially proves that American citizens or people with green cards are here illegally. But I was surprised. She said, yes, we should have E-Verify. But in reality, the Democratic Party doesn't want E-Verify. They want to hire illegal aliens and pay them under the table. So it's just, I confront her over a lot of stuff. And it's like the liberal activists, the black liberal activists were great. I even mentioned the movie Gus Snell that described the butcher who essentially butchered black babies and women in Philadelphia for decades. So
right.
That's why
Well, it
that's why I'm
sounds
running
like,
to replace her. That's why I'm running to replace her. I think it's pretty blunt, you know.
right, pretty straightforward. It sounds like your number one campaign, not necessarily promise, but just the fact that it'll be a focus is the babies. And also the Title IX issue where Biden's trying to erase it out. What else
Well, they're
are you
even
running with?
see one thing. They're even so-called Christians that disagree, that think that it should be regulated like 9 weeks or whatever. But I'm not prepared to get into that argument. I just think that the insanity, the crap, and everything else, that it's the federal government's responsibility to protect innocent people, and that includes babies. But it should be regulated at the state level, not do what the Democrats want, is to make abortion legal at any gestational age, whether it be before birth or infanticide after birth, or basically, you know, whatever. And then they say, well, what about the case of rape? Do you approve of rapists? And I say, of course not. Rapists should be executed, and you should not kill the baby because
Yeah.
the father was a rapist. So yeah, I'm direct. I taught chemistry for over 30 years in colleges and universities. So so I also have Asperger's, so that makes me more annoying to some. So
Well, we need some annoying red folks up there that have got a track record, first of all. But here you are, you pick up everything and you move to North Carolina. The next thing you know, you're back in politics again.
well, I didn't expect that. God did it. God set it up this way. It's like, I came to North Carolina to teach chemistry at UNC Pembroke, and I was there for 3 years, and then I got my PhD from NCSU, which is in Raleigh, in 2010. It was a little later than many because I got my master's from UConn in 1982, but I stopped to go into industry and have a family because I really wanted to have a family instead. But when my sons were in college and everything else, there was an opportunity for me to go back to grad school. I finally got it, and then I could teach in universities. So I taught in Kazakhstan for 4 years, Iraq for a year, South Texas for 3 years or 2 years, and South Carolina. But then I retired in 2021 to be consultant. And
Right.
so then I sold my house last year and moved up here to Wake, thinking there was a nice Republican representing Wake County, and found out there was a raging feminazi who wanted to kill babies. So with my history, I figured I should do it. So
Right. Lord taps you, he gives you a Gibbs slap on the back of the head and says, guess what I got you doing?
well, I was bored, and I figured there was something for me to do because I couldn't get a job directly doing something. And I realized, well, God wants me to do this, and trust God to provide and everything else. And the voting's already started here. The official day is March 5th, but they have early voting now. And some people yesterday already told me they voted for me, which is cool. But that's all in God's hands. I believe firmly that even though I didn't spend much money, if God wants me to win the primary, I will. But if I don't, then there's another guy who probably will, who's a retired colonel who was in the Army for over 30 years, or public service. So he has the credentials. He ran in 2020, and I have nothing against him. If I knew back in July he was going to do it, I wouldn't have done it. Because he's pro-life too, but he decided to join in 2 days before the end of the filing period, and I was committed. So basically,
Well, and the
his
very
job is
fact that you picked up the ball and continue to run with it.
well, his job now is just to beat me. If he beats me, that's
Yeah.
fine. That's the way it works. But it's like then my job will be over, and I'll be out of the spotlight and go back to enjoying my son and my granddaughters. So
Right. Either way, it's a win.
yeah, I've educated some people. So
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
and Deborah Ross thinks I'm mean, so that's fine. As long as the Democrat thinks I'm mean, and I've done my job. So
Well, you know what? They think everybody is mean that doesn't agree with them.
of course. If they get attacked on the right, they call you a racist, when in reality the Democratic Party is that had the jackboot thugs called the KKK for years. And the master of Hillary Clinton was Robert Byrd. The House building is still called the Robert Byrd Building, which is his grand dragon of the KKK. Everything. So it's like them calling Republicans racist is like they're saying it to a mirror. It's like
Yeah.
it's the same.
Well, they've worn the word out, and it really doesn't mean anything. Even Morgan Freeman was like, "Why would you call me a black man? I don't call you a white man.
Yeah.
We're men." You know?
Well, the thing is, these activists were African American, and I said, look, the Biden administration's immigration policy is destroying your communities because they're allowing people in from Central America and South America to essentially take the entry-level jobs that your high school students, when they graduate or get their GED, they want to start entry-level at McDonald's or something, or doing yard work or something else, but it's like they'd rather hire some illegal alien Guatemala so they can pay less money. And it's a situation where what the Trump administration was trying to do was allow with enterprise zones and other things to essentially enable young Black people, particularly Black people, because they're particularly affected by this liberal nonsense, essentially, and as well as other minorities, but it's more theirs because in some respects the Democratic Party fosters an anti-family atmosphere for them. And and then they wonder why there's mental illness and other stuff like that. But it's like family is very, very important to many different communities, and that includes their community. And when their daughters are convinced by liberal white people that they should kill their baby, that now that they're suddenly pregnant, yes, it has a tendency to make those girls mentally ill because they realize they killed their kid. So
Right.
and they can't deny the truth that they killed their kid. And so that the angry activists go on, say they want company, so they'll try and get other little girls to do it. But then if that doesn't work to kill but that's eugenics. And I encourage your audience to study eugenics because what eugenics wanted to do was essentially abort the babies, the minorities, and the feeble-minded, whatever else, or sterilize them. And the old way of doing surgery and just sterilizing them. Well, now they just feed them trans drugs and castrating chemicals and cut off body parts to prevent them from ever having kids in the future. So they just put a modern patina on it, and lipstick on a pig is still a pig.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Well, Gene, where can folks find you to get more information about you?
Well, my last name is Douglas, Douglass. So it's G, the first initial, Douglas.us. And that's my Substack website. Yes, they're going to go through a barrier where they can say skip if they don't want to subscribe to my thing, and then see all the stuff that I did, because I started my Substack 2 years ago because I have interest in a lot of different things.
Right.
I've got sermons by Howard Hendricks from decades ago, as well as the Twitter files and the Durham report stuff and everything.
Okay.
So I got a lot of different stuff on it, but I just changed my blog with Substack I changed the blog with Substack to my campaign website. And so because it was free, but also it was much more effective than just having a stupid classic sign saying this. And there's a way to donate if they want to, but the point is, pray for me because there's a distinct possibility I may win the primary. That'll be great, but it'll be weird because I've never won a primary and ran against a Democrat incumbent like my wife did. And my wife was just a shock because we didn't expect she'd win in '98. So it's like,
well, and you were right in the beginning. If God wants you there, he'll put you there.
Well, that's
this podcast for me, I would have never done this. I would have never done it.
God
And
calls
all of a sudden, the next thing I knew, I was being dragged into it, and it felt comfortable.
Well, God didn't expect you to teach chemistry for 30 years either. So it's a situation where we all have our gifts, and God calls us things. I became a Christian when I was 15 after I saw the movie Time to Run in 1973. Anybody wants to see that, they can see it on Amazon Video. It's cool. And it's free on Tubi if they want to see it. But basically, it's got a great sermon at the end. I related to it, and it's like God saved me out of a miserable family situation and gave me one of my own, and the wife I adore, and 2 great sons who are 36 and 38, and 2 granddaughters. And unfortunately, my wife went to be with the Lord last July, but I still adore her as their mother. But I'm confident I will see her again. So to live as Christ, to die as gain.
That's it. It's a celebration of ascension.
Right.
Off to Jesus. All right. Well, what I'll do is I'll put a link on my social media to your site. So anybody that's watching this will see it and be able to jump over to it and share it along the way. Especially those folks out in North Carolina, number 2.
Right.
Ken, let you go so I can finish the show up.
It's essentially most of Wake County. So basically,
Yeah.
it's a COTS thing. So it'll be easy to go around. And it'll be very weird. If I win, that means my job isn't done yet. But if I lose, then it's like, fine, I could go back to being normally retired and
right,
not worry about
exactly.
anymore. That's God has someone else to do the dirty work to get her out.
Exactly. All right. Well, we got to let you go so I can finish the show up. I really appreciate you taking time on a Sunday to do this so we can get this out to the folks.
Well, thank you all, and I appreciate it. If you want me to join your show again, I'll be happy to, because the primary is March 5th, but my Substack thing will continue even after the thing, trying to educate people, but I'll just change the lettering and change the title back to what it was before, Good versus Evil.
All right. Well, thanks again. Have a great weekend. What's left of it.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you. Bye.